This video is dedicated to all the women who have genuinely suffered and endured real trauma and oppression. It also serves as a caution to those who blur the lines between true victimhood and the weaponization of it for personal gain. May we always honor the truth and support those who truly need it. The method explained in this video is a method used by modern women to weaponize suffering in order to gain power and to destroy men. The same approach is used by many people in the past and is not restricted to gender. This is not about women. This is about women using this type of strategy. The State of Israel also uses the same tactic. The Jews were victims at some point in history, and they suffered, but in their current state, they have weaponized that suffering and used it to make the world take a knee to them by crying anti-Semitism and victim whenever someone calls them out on their crimes against the Palestinians in the world. They have monetized their past, and now they have committed the most evil crimes and still go unchecked. While there is no similarity between modern women and these people, the tactic is the same.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Pain is not weakness, but in wrong hands it becomes a weapon against you. Not in a dramatic way, not with poison or betrayal. It's colder than that, more subtle. Pain, when shown by men, becomes a form of currency. And women, knowingly or not, learn how to spend it. Your struggle becomes context for her choices. Your breakdown, it just opened up her freedom to act colder, to withhold, to compare you. Pain is your signal that something's wrong. But to her, it can be a signal that it's time to pull away. Men are told to open up, but never told who is qualified to receive it. Not everyone deserves your wounds, and most women aren't emotionally trained to hold a man's vulnerability without using it. Not even maliciously, just functionally. Your emotional exposure removes the mystery. It weakens the polarity. Suddenly, she's no longer dealing with the man she projected. Now you're real, and real things bleed. That's when the feminine instinct tends to kick in and tests. Not in nurture, but to evaluate, because your emotional pain, once visible, now becomes her scoreboard. You don't know it, but you just entered a game you didn't ask to play. This is why so many men feel more alone after they open up. You thought honesty would build closeness, but for her, it builds contrast between you and the idea she had in her head of what you were, or what you could have been. Between you and the man she could have had. She could have had. Your pain puts you on a different tire. And she felt it. Not because she's heartless, necessarily, but because instincts are louder than ideologies. And instincts to them don't lie. They observe, they rank, they move accordingly. That's what no one wants to admit. A man's suffering doesn't just hurt, it lowers him. A man's suffering doesn't just hurt, it lowers him. Some women don't want to stop suffering because suffering makes them interesting. In a world where victimhood is currency, attention is oxygen, pain becomes performance. The more oppressed she appears, the more justified her actions feel. She cheats because she's emotionally neglected. She manipulates because she has an anxious attachment style. She disrespects you, but frames it as healing, empowerment, protection. Everything is a symptom. Nothing is her fault. The illusion is subtle. She's not chasing peace. No, she's chasing leverage. And pain gives her just that. It lets her bypass responsibility while still maintaining the moral high ground. You call her out, well, she says you're invalidating her trauma. You push back, now you're a narcissist. Notice the pattern? The worse she feels, the more power she gains. It's not healing. It's a modern, weaponized identity. A walking contradiction. Victim on the outside, tyrant underneath. And the worst part is that society rewards it. Her emotional instability isn't a red flag anymore. It's not a red flag. It's her story. It's her Instagram. It's her job. It's her being a counselor or a divorced Muslimah coach. Her bad behavior gets repackaged as bravery. Her misbehavior on TikTok, on Instagram, on social media, her makeup, her dances, her trends, her creating fitna gets repackaged as she's a brave woman. She's an empowered woman. She's setting boundaries when she's really punishing. She's finding herself while destroying you. Accountability doesn't sell, my dear brothers and sisters. Sympathy does. So, she leans into the pain because the pain protects her from judgment. And you're left questioning yourself because everything she does is wrapped in a traumatic excuse. This is what happens when weakness becomes a virtue and struggle becomes personality. You're not dealing with a broken person. No. You're dealing with someone who figured out that staying broken actually pays off. Views, likes, money, well, power. It pays off. That being a victim offers immunity. And the more you try to understand her, the more you validate the mask. The mask. Because underneath all the chaos, underneath all the makeup, underneath all the tightening of the abaya and the fitna, there's a simple truth. She doesn't want to heal. She wants to win. You keep hearing it. Women are just more emotionally deep. Emotions. Abstract things. Women are just more emotionally deep. No. They're more emotionally expressive. It's not the same thing. I'm going to repeat it. Women are just more emotionally deep. That's what they say. No. They're more emotionally expressive. That's not the same thing. Expression isn't depth. Screaming louder doesn't mean there's more substance. causing problems, exposing, canceling people doesn't mean that you're deep, or that you found something new. No. And this myth that women carry some ancient emotional wisdom, it's mostly performance. A social habit that's been mistaken for insight. Real depth isn't how much you feel. It's how much you understand what you feel. And most don't. The problem is, men confuse chaos with complexity. She cries, withdraws, overshares, flips moods, and he thinks he's just not emotionally intelligent enough to get it. Again, abstract. Wrong. What she's doing isn't depth. It's disorder. But disorder plays well in a culture that romanticizes struggle. Disorder plays well in a culture that romanticizes struggle. A woman falling apart is now seen as in tune with herself. But try asking her to explain what's going on underneath all that noise. It collapses. It's not mystery. It's a mess. And men get trapped in it because they were raised to believe that female emotion is sacred, even when it's abusive. Here's the reality. If you can't sit still with your own pain without projecting it onto others, you're not deep. If you need someone else to absorb your breakdowns constantly, you're not deep. That's just emotional dependency, wrapped in poetic language. But society has normalized this dynamic. Men are expected to be the emotional punching bag, the unpaid therapist, the rock, and the reason she gets to unravel. The lie of emotional depth is just another way to shield dysfunction. Because if you label it as complex, no one's allowed to question it. But truth doesn't need theatrics. Understanding doesn't need a meltdown. Most what gets labeled as emotional depth today is just unchecked ego with a sad story to sell. When a man suffers, he hides it. When a woman suffers, she broadcasts it. Lives, Instagram, Facebook, post. Everyone shares their suffering, their trauma. Lives, TikToks. She sells it. She becomes a coach all of a sudden. Not because she's more vulnerable, but because suffering has become her leverage. It's a form of currency. Victimhood buys attention, sympathy, moral authority. And in a world obsessed with feelings, that's power. Real power, not physical. Nah. Yeah, we have the muscles. Yeah, we're strong. Nah. Not intellectual, but social dominance through weakness. Social dominance through weakness. And it works because the second a woman cries, the conversation changes. The whole world changes the moment a woman sheds tears. The facts no longer matter. Emotions hijack the truth. And now you are the villain. She's been taught that suffering makes her important, that her pain is always someone else's fault, that discomfort equals injustice. So instead of fixing anything, she cultivates misery. Not consciously necessarily, but strategically, because there's no incentive to heal when being broken gets you more followers, more protection, more reason to escape responsibility or accountability. You can't argue with someone who constantly bleeds in front of you, and she knows it. You can't argue with someone who's like that. That's why women will sabotage their own peace. They need problems. Drama isn't just an addiction. It's a survival mechanism in a culture that rewards pain and suffering. She can't let things be good for too long. No. Something has to go wrong. Otherwise, she loses relevance. No chaos, no spotlight. No breakdown, no attention. And this isn't just a social media thing. It's baked into relationships, workplaces, even therapy, podcasts. Everyone's catering to the performance of pain. So, what happens when her suffering gets questioned? She doubles down. Accusations fly. You're toxic, insensitive, gaslighting. Why? Because you're threatening her last source of control. In a world where accountability feels like oppression, suffering becomes the shield against truth. And as long as that shield holds, she never has to grow. She just has to hurt louder than you can speak. We live in a world where female suffering is considered sacred, untouchable, above questioning. When a woman speaks about her pain, you're not allowed to challenge it, even if it's weaponized, exaggerated, or entirely fictional, a lie. Her emotions are treated as reality, not because they're true, but because they're hers. And this cultural immunity gives her the license to rewrite history, repaint herself as the hero or victim, and destroy reputations with a single accusation, all without consequences. This is why women rarely take accountability when they cause damage. Emotional outbursts, manipulations, even false claims. None of it sticks because she's not held to the same standards of responsibility. Society assumes she's acting out of pain, and pain justifies everything. Break your stuff, you were hurt. Publicly shame online, you were healing. Cheat, you're emotionally neglected. Her suffering becomes a path to rewrite morality. While a man has to prove innocence, she just has to cry convincingly. You think this doesn't affect you? Look closer. HR policies, dating norms and marriage norms, court rulings, all blend to the assumed virtue of female pain. And the irony? Many women know this. Not all exploit it, but enough do, especially when accountability would threaten their ego. Because as long as her pain is seen as pure, she holds the moral high ground. Even if she put herself there by stepping on someone else's life, the truth is brutal. Female pain isn't just felt, it's performed. And the more society rewards that performance, the more it spreads. The more society rewards that performance, the more it spreads, becomes a trend. Pain has become a power structure. And if you question it, you're not just wrong, you're a threat to the whole game, and you need to be canceled. You need to be reported. Modern women have learned that chaos pays. not just emotionally, but socially and financially. A breakup becomes a brand. A toxic relationship becomes a TED Talk. A failed situationship turns into a self-help book. Or an influencer arc, some sort of Muslima coach, some sort of business, a label, a brand. The more broken she is, the more relatable she becomes. And being relatable sells. Pain becomes her business model, and the market rewards it extensively. Look around. Platforms flood with women oversharing trauma under the guise of healing. But what's really happening is monetized victimhood. She turns every scar into content, every ex into an anecdote, every meltdown into a milestone. The worse her choices, the higher her engagement, because her audience isn't looking for truth. They're looking for someone to validate their dysfunction. She becomes a mirror for unresolved guilt. And instead of growth, they applaud stagnation. This is how cycles repeat, because the woman who profits of crisis has no reason to stop creating it. If peace doesn't perform, she'll provoke more drama. If accountability doesn't trend, she'll blame someone else. This isn't healing, it's harvesting. Harvesting attention, sympathy, and power through selective storytelling. And men, well, they're the fuel. Every mistake he makes, real or imagined, is a fresh chapter in her redemption arc. But here's the twist. Even women know this game is unsustainable. Deep down, they sense the emptiness of constantly performing damage. But as long as brokenness keeps paying better than discipline, most won't stop. Why would they? In a world where crisis has more value than character, dysfunction becomes strategy. And when suffering is currency, self-destruction becomes a career. She doesn't need love, she needs attention. Not just want, need. In fact, if you remove the male gaze, the validation, the constant ping of digital affirmation, most women today wouldn't know who they are because attention has become the default measurement of worth. No integrity, no intellect, no contribution, no. Just the eyes watching her, reacting, praising, envying. It's not feminine energy anymore, no. It's a performance art for strangers. This isn't about narcissism. It's about identity erosion, where her self-image is built on filters, likes, and algorithms, aesthetics. Reality becomes irrelevant. She doesn't dress for herself. She doesn't speak for her clarity. Even more, or every move is calibrated to provoke reaction, attention. Outfit choices are designed to bait desire or envy. Vulnerability posts are curated to fish for comfort. Even silence is strategic. She goes quiet just long enough to be chased, for people to wonder what's been happening. Her entire life becomes one long psychological campaign to remain seen. And it works until it doesn't, because attention has no loyalty. The same men who once obsessed over her forgot her name a week later. The same friends who hyped her stories drift away once the entertainment dries up. The game she mastered starts playing her, and now she's trapped in a loop where she has to outdo her last performance, her last post, her last meltdown, her last version of empowerment. Because if she ever disappears, she's forgotten. within days, within a week, someone else will take her place. That's the real fear. Not being unloved, but being unseen. So she keeps performing even when it empties her, because the thought of disappearing from relevance is more terrifying than losing her soul. Attention has become her oxygen. But like all addictions, the high gets weaker and the crash gets longer. And by the time she wakes up, the room is empty. She doesn't chase peace, she manufactures chaos to feel in control. It sounds backwards, but it's calculated because a calm environment gives her no leverage, no foothold, no crisis to twist in her favor, but a mess. That's where she thrives. That's her ecosystem. She knows how to weaponize instability, start the fire, and play the victim of the smoke. The modern woman has learned that being unpredictable gives her the upper hand. One moment she's sweet, the next she's cold. One day she wants love, the next she pushes away and wants to break away and leave. And while men scramble trying to figure her out, she's not confused. No. She's constructing a situation where logic doesn't matter, where emotions override truth because in a stable, rational space, her contradictions get exposed. In chaos, they just get justified. Look around. Relationships now feel more like power struggles than partnerships. Marriage is a power struggle. The slightest disagreement spirals into week-long Cold War. Boundaries are treated like insults, or you're manipulated. You're a narcissist, you're this, you're that. Communication becomes manipulation. And when the man finally sets a limit, she calls it controlling or toxic or narcissistic. Why? Because his clarity threatens the fog she needs to operate in. If the game is transparent, she can't move in the shadows. She needs confusion to remain untouchable. It's a power thing. It's not that she wants everything to burn. It's that in ashes, she controls the narrative. Chaos gives her plausible deniability. She can destroy something, cry about it, and then blame you for reacting. It's not emotional instability. It's emotional strategy. It's very deep. And if you can't keep up, she'll paint you as weak. You can't handle it. Not because you are weak, but because you didn't let her weaponize your peace. In her world, the one who creates the most noise wins. And that's exactly why she'll never be happy. She's too addicted to setting fires to ever live in the warmth. She doesn't just want attention, she needs it like oxygen. And not the healthy kind. No. Not admiration rooted in respect or meaning. No. She's addicted to the kind that floods her phone, her ego, her empty hours at night. The kind that fills a void instead of fixing it. Validation has become her new drug. And the problem with drugs is this: the more you use them, the less they work. So she keeps chasing more, louder, bolder, cheaper. Every post isn't just a picture. It's a fishing hook. Every caption a script of controlled vulnerability, healing, self-love. Do not disturb. But behind the spiritual costume, the mask, is someone checking who watched her story, measuring her worth in likes, comparing her self-esteem to other girls' comments and other girls' accounts. She isn't healing. She's marketing her dysfunction in exchange for attention because being seen feels more important than being stable. But the cost of that performance is heavy. She can't form real bonds because every interaction becomes a transaction. She doesn't see people, she sees mirrors. If they reflect back praise, they're kept. If not, they're discarded. And men, they're not partners. No, they're not husbands. They're audience members now. Just one of many. They just got picked for whatever reason. Their role is to applaud, to validate, to submit. She's the real captain. Any attempt at truth is labeled as hate or insecurity. Because the only truth she's interested in is the one that flatters her delusion. She doesn't want to be loved. She wants to be envied. And that's why it all falls apart. Real love requires silence, struggle, patience, and none of that earns engagement. So she trades it for noise, for notifications. But when the screen goes black and no one's looking anymore, the silence starts screaming. And there's not enough filters on earth to hide from that. There just isn't. She wants to be treated like a queen until it comes the weight of the crown. Responsibility, accountability, no. She'll scream independent while outsourcing every ounce of discomfort. The modern woman isn't being empowered. She's being fooled. She's being infantilized behind layers of therapeutic language, slogans, and social safety nets. The world now bends itself backwards to protect her feelings, not sharpen her thinking. And it shows. She can make a mistake and caught a lesson, ruin a relationship, divorce, and she'll just label it as growth. Avoid reality and repackage it as protecting her peace and her sanity. Every flaw is dressed in a positive costume, makeup. That's what it is. Not to evolve from it, but to excuse it. The culture has taught her that criticism equals abuse. The consequences are oppression, that feeling something means it's real, and disagreeing with her experiences means you're toxic. This isn't empowerment, it's regression. It's just regression with prettier branding. Look around. She's praised for quitting. She's applauded for blocking, for exposing, for canceling. She's celebrated for removing anything that challenges her. That's not strength. That's learned helplessness wrapped in affirmations. And behind all the talk about doing the work, most are doing nothing but curating an illusion of progress. Nothing of substance. She doesn't grow. She rotates in cycles. And if you point that out, you're the villain. You're the bad guy. You're using religious shaming. You're the haram police. Because nothing threatens arrested development like truth. Nothing threatens arrested development like truth. This is the woman who wants full adult freedom. This is the woman who wants full adult freedom with toddler accountability. Who wants emotional immunity while policing everyone else's tone. How dare you have a go at her? How dare you respond to her? How dare you comment? Who demands protection from discomfort and complains she's bored and unfulfilled? It's not empowerment if you never evolve past self-absorption. A woman who can't take feedback, face herself, or accept reality is not powerful. She's just stuck. And it's not society keeping her there. It's her refusal to grow up. There's a power in being powerless. I'm going to repeat that. There's power, huge power in being powerless. Think Israel. Think the victim. Think what they've been doing to always gain sympathy and attention and allow them to destroy others. I just had to stick that in there because while it's not about women or Israel here, but it is something of the same type of strategy. There's power in being powerless, and modern women have learned to weaponize it. Victimhood is no longer a state to overcome. It's a badge, a currency, a shortcut to validation without the effort of truth. The second she frames herself as the oppressed, the conversation ends. She's always hurting, always misunderstood, always recovering from something. And if she's not, she'll invent the story that makes her one. If she's not, she'll invent the story that makes her one. Everything now becomes a reason she can't be held accountable. Childhood, trauma, man, society, her zodiac sign, her trauma, her ex, her period, her burnout, her overthinking, her ADHD, her this or that. The more broken she appears, the more attention she receives. And if you challenge that narrative, you're gaslighting her. It's no longer about healing, it's about owning the role that exempts her from growth. Because when you're always the victim, you're never the cause. This is not strength. It's emotional manipulation, masquerading as vulnerability. When weakness becomes identity, strength becomes betrayal. And so she avoids it. She'll talk about therapy, but never change. She'll speak about boundaries, but only when it benefits her. She won't fix the problem because the problem gives her purpose. She doesn't want solutions, she wants witnesses. Witnesses to her suffering, her stories, her versions of the truth, curated and edited to ensure she's always the one who got hurt. But there's a catch. The longer she wears the mask, the longer she wears that makeup, the more her identity, her true identity, decays behind it. The real strategy isn't that she's a victim, it's that she never wanted to be anything else. Because being a victim means she's always right, always deserving, always protected from accountability. But if you took that away, stripped her excuses, who would she actually be if no one was left to blame? Think about that.